and I'll show you a PDF. So this will be of a PDF. Okay. If I open this PDF, it'll come in right away. And here's my PDF, Cells in Biology. So when we talk about the learning aspect, I could sit here and listen to this out loud, but when it comes time for my biology test, I may not remember everything that I listened to. And by the way, if you are using text readers, make sure that you test the listening comprehension of your students. I feel like that's a piece that people oftentimes forget, because this is really listening comprehension, isn't it? And a lot of times the listening comprehension is beyond the reading comprehension level, but not always. I talked to a person in Michigan that did this big study on text readers, and it was really interesting. He said, most of the students didn't make any progress, and they were using textbooks. And by the way, your textbooks, he was doing this for middle school. And if you did a readability test on his textbooks, most of those textbooks were probably a 12th grade readability level, right? So your listening comprehension level would have had to been on about a 12th grade level to understand that text. And I know his students weren't. And so I asked him, I said, well, did you check the listening comprehension levels of your students? And he didn't. I said, well, do you think they're at the same level of the text? He said, I think you're right. I don't think they are. So make sure you do that. Check the listening comprehension level. Because sometimes if you're reading a textbook and you're not at that listening comprehension level, it's not going to do you much good. It might bridge the gap a little bit, but it's not going to be the fix-all. Okay? And if that's the case, what you guys need to do is look at alternate texts. That's why I like the internet, because there's lots of lower level reading materials online. So make sure you do that. Or if you do have a textbook that's way above the listening comprehension level of your students, the other thing that you can do is you can supplement it with online materials. So guide them to materials that might be a little easier, so make that text much more manageable. Does that make sense? And you guys are shaking your head because you guys have seen it, right? Totally have seen it. So I'm preaching to the choir here. So I have my cells in biology. I obviously can click in my PDF, have this read out loud.
Before you begin reading, take a piece of paper.
Okay, and I can have that read out loud. And I've already shown you that. But I really wanted to get to these kind of reading strategy tools. And I can get there through my highlighters at the top. Actually, the first strategy that I'll show you that I like, in textbook chapters, they always put the review questions at the end. I've always been a believer that these should be in the beginning, because the students, they read their textbook chapter, they get to the end, they're like, oh, I wasn't looking for that. So then they got to go back, right? And they never reread anyways. So if we put these in the beginning, that would be really helpful so I know what to find. So if I was using Read Out Loud, what I would do is I'd teach my students, go to the end of that chapter, and here's my chapter questions. Okay? And I would simply come in here and I'd highlight these. So if I highlight in the text, and then if I go up here, I have this green highlighter. I can click on that. It'll highlight it on the left-hand side. It'll also move it over and place it on the right-hand side for me. Does that make sense? If I go to number 2, what does a cell wall in plant cells do for plants? I'll highlight that. Highlight number 3, and highlight number 4. Okay? Now this right-hand side is going to be really critical for me. Why? Because guess what? I'm going to go back now to the first page in my chapter, and I'm going to start reading. And I love this right-hand side because it leaves it there for me. Okay? So as I read, I can reference the right-hand side and say, hey, what do I need to find? Okay? So as I go through,
next page.
Okay, this says, what do all living things have in common? And as I'm reading through my page, I notice that all living things are made of cells. Okay, so there's my answer. So to move that over to the right-hand side, notice how I have it highlighted on the right-hand side. I can simply go up to my yellow
bookmark
highlighter and highlight that, and I can simply place that underneath that topic. So I can show kind of a hierarchy here. Okay? Now, the other tool that I like, so I showed you highlighting. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So I can highlight that text. And one of the things that I would strongly recommend you do, make sure students put these things in their own words. Or one of my favorite strategies is make sure that they're paying attention to their thoughts as they're reading this and have them write that down. So how do they do that? I highlighted all living things are made of cells. If I simply click on my add a note button, which is right here at the top, a little piece of paper with pencil next to it, I'll get my note. This is similar to note cards. Do you guys all do note cards going through college? All right, your research note cards is exactly the same thing. And this is where I would write my thoughts. And there's no bad thought here. Like, I oftentimes recommend students write, right? Right? And I love that because, I found the answer, but what does this tell me as an educator? Still don't get what the heck cells are, okay? Like, what are these things? And I like that. So make sure they're paying attention to their thoughts and have them write that down. This could be a summary of what I think, that definition is, and maybe I'm a little off. That gives you guys a great cue to intervene, right? You won't know that your students don't know what cells are until the test, and then it's too late, right? You got to move on. But if you're doing this, it's nice because you'll know before the test, and you can sit down and say, hey, let me explain this to you. So make sure they're doing that. All right. Now I have, what does the cell wall in plant cells do for plants? So that's the second thing that I wanted to find. I could find it in my textbook, but also know that we still have this web tab. Okay? So I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a Google search, and I'm going to try to find that. Okay? So I could go into Wikipedia, or I could use any other resource that I have, and I could find that there. Oops. I'm having some problems with my... Okay. I'm having some problems with my internet, but you guys will get the idea.
Forward.
Okay. So I could go online. Now what's nice about Read Out Loud is that you can, here's a cell biology piece. Yeah, here we go. So this is biology for kids online, and I can simply click on there and have it read.
All living organisms on Earth are divided in pieces called cells.
Okay. Now what's nice about this is that if I'm online, I can also highlight things online. So I can click here on my green highlighter. Maybe I move that under there. And I can start highlighting things on the web. So what's one of those 21st century skills? A lot of schools are talking about that. It's gathering information from multiple resources, right? Synthesizing them all together, right? And being able to write about it. So this is kind of what I'm doing here. I'm going to lots of different websites. I have my textbook information, and I can basically highlight anything online. I can take my notes and have everything read to me, and I'm synthesizing it all on the right-hand side. Okay? All right here. All right, any questions on that? By the way, these highlights, these are also your bookmarks. Okay? So these are bookmarking where I get this. If I want to go back to this statement, all living things are made of cells, I simply double-click on the bookmark icon, and it takes me back to the exact location in my book. Right? Notice how I got this off the web. If I double-click, it's actually keeping track of every single website that I go to. And now here I'm back on that website, which is also nice for you guys to go in and look at where your students are getting their information off the internet. Why? Because not all websites are a legitimate source of information, right? You guys know that about as well as anyone. And so you can basically come in here and actually look where they're getting all their information from. All right. Any questions on that? Yeah, question.
Does it also generate a bibliography?
Oh, good. Yeah, good question. It doesn't do it automatically, but we built in some supports for students to do that.
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, yep, good question. The question was, does it generate a bibliography? So it doesn't do it automatically, but I have this icon right here, which is my bibliographer. And if I click on that, it's going to give me my bibliographer. And this is going to help me cite all my sources. We have it organized. Typically, what do we teach our students first? A book by one author. This is usually what we do first. Now, I've done lots of these, so I can simply come in here, click on New, and I can type my bibliography entry right here. Some of your students may not be able to look at this and know that this is last name, first name, this is the title, this is the city, this is the publisher. Okay, some of your students might not be able to do that. In that case, what they could do is use this wizard.
Use wizard.
Which is this icon right here.
Use wizard.
Okay. So if I click on Use Wizard, here it's going to step me through one piece at a time, because we know that students that are struggling with a lot of this information, if we break it up and chunk it into smaller bits, they'll be able to manage it and handle that information. So here I have last name, first name, initial, and I don't have a book, so
Kevin.
I'll type my name in there.
Johnston, Kevin.
Okay. If I click next, I could do title. Okay.
The best presentation
Okay, and I'll type in my title.
ever. The best presentation ever.
Okay. Location. Okay. Now, where it doesn't ask me for punctuation, I don't need to put it. What we know from research is that most students that struggle with writing, they struggle with the mechanics of writing, right? And I was a writing consultant on the college level in Boston, actually, and my students always came to me with their bibliographers. These are like grad students and undergrad students, great universities in Boston, and they never got this, and they'd always have something crazy like, hey, Kevin, I got this online. It's by 3 authors. I think it's some like online anthology. How do I cite it? So they always struggle with all the mechanics. So how do you cite your sources? It's all mechanics. So we actually don't require you to put the punctuation, because we're going to do that for you. Name of publisher.
Kevin. Publishing.
Okay. Year, 2010. And when I click Finish, what we're going to do is we're going to put the punctuation in there for you. We're going to put a colon after the city, right? And then what we're finally going to do is we're going to alphabeticalize it all for you as well. Okay, so we're trying to take away all the mechanics. Your job is to find these bits and pieces of information to cite this. And obviously, I could print this out. I could hand this in and show where I'm getting all my information from. Yeah. Other questions? That was a great one. No other questions? All right.
So is that a separate program that you have to add to read out loud? How does that work?
Good question. The question is that a separate program that we have to add to read out loud? No, it's just built into read out loud. So if I simply click on this icon, it'll just bring that up, and it'll save this into this file. So it keeps track of all my bookmarks, where I am in my books, and it keeps track of all that. So it's just built in. Yep. Other questions? Pretty simple so far? Excellent. Yeah, question in the back.
Is the finished product delivered as a printed hard copy, or can it be delivered electronically so I can sort those?
Yeah, the question is the delivered product either printed copy or electronic? You could do either or. For example, I can come up here and I could save this. Okay, and I could save this as, maybe cell biology. I could save this to my desktop. Also, one new thing that we added to Read Out Loud, if you're working in a network environment, I could save this up to my network and get these files anywhere. That's probably the easiest way to deliver to a teacher, is to save it on a network so you can easily pull those up and look at them, even make, comment on them and whatnot. And I could save this, and that just saves it as a file. And everything's in that file, so then I can open it. I could look at all the websites and whatnot. The other way to do that is to simply print it out, and I can go to File, Print. Oops. I won't print it out. And I could print that out. It'll also ask me, and I won't do that because I don't know where it's going to go, but it'll also ask me what I want printed. Do I want this right-hand side printed? Do I want the left-hand side printed? So I could print out this right-hand side. I actually think this right-hand side is a great study tool. All right, so here's my outline. This is what I can study from. If I can read this off computer, I could just print it out, or I could hand that in. Yep. Yeah, great questions. Other questions? No. So as educators, one of the other things that I wanted to show you is what we could do if we actually spent a little time. Like I showed you, within seconds I got it up and running. I was reading books. I was taking all my notes. If you do have students that need more support,